So, podcast number 2. Thank you for being here, Mr. David Hayakawa. Happy to have you.
Thank you, sir.
Right on. So, let's talk about the Diamond Head shooting. I guess we'll start with, what was your impression of Jerry Hanel, also known as Jarda Hanel, and his interactions with your client?
I mean, the man was crazy. In his interactions, in court, his lawyers, we waged a 7-year restraining order battle with him. We won every single time we went to court. The court granted us what we wanted, and Mr. Hanel is a very smart man, would find something that was not covered to harass my client and do it. But he just had that intensity. You look at the media reports, his eyes are bugging out of his head. And he was a true believer in whatever thoughts were going on in his head.
I had a question about that, because I wasn't sure if he was just, how much of it was him being mentally ill and how much was it just he's a mean-spirited person? Because some of the stuff just sounded like it was mean-spirited.
You know, he was well, first of all, whether or not he was mentally ill or not, he was a mean-spirited person, okay? And again, mean-spirited people can have their nice moments, but when they get fixated or pissed at somebody, then it really comes out. And his mental illness clearly got worse in the last year. Clearly got worse. So I would say in the beginning, most of it was just he was an angry, mean SOB.
That's too bad, because as it happened, everybody was just shocked at the fact that 2 officers lost their lives. I'm sure the neighbors suspected that this guy had the capability to do that the entire time. It's just that we don't really know what to look for when somebody might be over the edge. Do you think there's any signs that this guy could go over the edge, unbelievable?
Well, I don't think anybody would have thought that he would ambush 2 police officers and kill them in cold blood, and that's what it was, I will tell you, because he had these surveillance systems, and to the best of my unofficial analysis, and I've looked at some of the unreleased videotapes and things from security cameras and things like that, he essentially ambushed them. He knew they were coming down this pathway to his house, and when they turned to cut the corner going to his door, now they had gone to his door 50, 100 times
before. There's a shared driveway, wasn't there?
Shared driveway.
So he had to
walk down it again, and then they have to take a right turn. And there was a window, but it was never open. So they would always go to the door, pound on the door, come on, come out, I don't come out, make him come out. And again, he had never come out attacking the cops, the police. Although in this case, obviously, there's a lady there having been stabbed, and the police. But again, that's being stabbed and a gun are different things now. Yeah. And so they come down and, they're thinking really that there's just a door there. And my guess is, and this is only a guess, is that when they came around the corner, he essentially could see them coming and then shot them individually, because the second officer then came down. And now again, I don't know this for a fact, but that's what I gather.
Yeah, so everything that we say is basically alleged, even though there's a lot of strong evidence to,
correct.
That basically says he was in the house, he did all this, and him and that poor landlord lady, Lois Cain, got burned together in that house.
True, but my guess, again, based on media reports, is, so here's what I gather, and again, this is not confirmed, this is based on talking to various people, listening to the media reports, and some things that weren't released, is first of all, the landlady for 7 years refused to listen to the concerns of all her neighbors. She was living on the mainland, and bottom line, she didn't care. For whatever reason, or she thought people were exaggerating, or she didn't care. But when you send the lady or provide the lady with videotapes and documentation of these crazy things, and she still refuses to essentially kick him out.
He's living rent-free. How does that work?
Apparently, the man had Mr. Hanel had a connection with her and her, I assume, deceased husband, and I guess some loyalty was owed or who knows what, but he lived there rent-free, and I think
that's a red flag.
Well, I don't know if the red flag.
Rent-free in Diamond Head? Like,
Well, that's it shows you you're a smart, lucky guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so she refused to help until she made a decision to move back to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And she moves back to Hawaii and realizes the man's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then she starts a process, apparently, based on her friend's statements to the press, of trying to get him out of the house. And to the point where she had to file an eviction on it. And the amazing thing is, now, first of all, these neighbors who are filing restraining orders, my clients...
I think there's 4 total people who filed restraining orders.
Well, there's 2 main people that matter, okay? And when these are mellow people, okay? And now, look, I deal with all kinds of people in life. And most of us, normal folk, you have a crazy man like this waging a constant battle of harassing you and your family, okay? You're the grandma and the kids and whatever it is. There's a lot of people who would openly go out there and, essentially start, confrontation that could easily lead to a fight, okay? These other neighbors they went out of their way to avoid problems. And when it wouldn't work, they went through the system and they never started yelling or anything like that. And so I will say that it shows you that...
on the west side, somebody would have went to his house, somebody's family would have been out there.
I don't want to pick on the west side, but anywhere. I mean, most of the guys I know, especially somebody harasses your family and your kids, and doesn't follow court orders, but these folks followed court orders. Anyway, it came to the point where, despite the fact that the landlord had not helped these people, they counseled her and said, Lois, you can't just be going down to talk to this man and say you're going to kick him out. This man is not stable and he is dangerous. And kicking him out of his man cave, his refuge, and I mean, that's a huge step. It's almost, my theory was he almost had to behave to a degree to live in that house. He still pushed the limit.
Yeah.
He pushed the limit with my client, who was his direct next door neighbor, and kind of fixated on him initially. But he couldn't go too far because that would risk him getting kicked out. But in the last year, when I believe he mentally declined a lot more, and he's being told he's kicked out, and then he's evicted, and after he's evicted, she goes down to that house voluntarily to talk to him.
Yeah, you can't go down.
You can't go down.
You can't go down there.
Not when the man is unstable, threatening, and the fact that she went down there, I mean, one shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but I don't know what was going through her head. She probably thought she could convince him and avoid a confrontation or a catastrophe.
She wasn't there first person for that 7-year span to see everything. She just kind of heard reports. Maybe she believed some of it, maybe not. Then she gets home and thinks, it's all good. Let me go talk to him downstairs. I don't know, man.
Well, he even deteriorated over the period she was downstairs. But, I mean, when the reports I have heard from people are, he very clearly communicated with her that he's not leaving. And the other neighbors, and again, these are people who she had rejected their pleas, did their best to counsel her, you need to stay away from this man. And for whatever reason, she went down there. So anyway, apparently she's down there that day, and then, again, this part's a little fuzzy, but I think the tenant heard screaming and yelling, her being beaten or something or another, runs down to their check, and then gets stabbed with a hoe.
Yeah, a 3-pronged steel rake.
Yeah, it's like a hole with the 3 prongs. And, I gotta tell you, you look at these videos, most of the videos, he videotaped everything now. And I trained my clients to do, anytime they saw him, they turned on their phone because something bad was gonna happen. Not like this bad, but something weird and strange and harassing. And he would always have something in his hand. It was like a steel mallet, because he was hammering a pipe to make noise on my client's property line. First thing in the morning, bang, 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 bang. Why to do that? Who knows why? Okay. While by the way, when he would do the banging, he'd set up a hidden camera, and you'd see how when somebody puts a camera and they kind of look in it, so when you do the playback, there you are looking into your
Yeah,
camera,
yeah.
you know, and he'd do that, and then make sure it's good, and then go and start banging, and then my client would come out with his cell, right? Like, what are you damaging of my property? You were hurting my fence. What are you doing? Breaking my pipes, or come out, not saying anything, but come out with this thing, and then Mr. Hanel would like jump back and go, why are you videotaping me, and a kind of motion. Oh well, this is being videotaped now, but. To show you his frame of mind, when we had the trial, they put in the whole videotape. In other words, here I am setting up the secret camera to catch my neighbor coming out. And then I'm banging, and I'm, oh my goodness, why are you coming out? I'm just an innocent person, when you obviously set up the whole thing.
Yeah. You know what's I spoke to people yesterday, and I talked to every contact I could across a wide variety of different areas. And I was trying to think, what can you do if you just have the misfortune of having a crazy neighbor, and if you're in such a nice, desirable area, I almost feel like moving out's not an option, because if you get in there, you stay, because it's the Gold Coast.
My client he had made a decision to sell his place.
Oh, really? Because was that part of it, or the whole reason, like...
No, couldn't take it anymore.
Really? Good for him.
Your home is your castle,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter if you're on the Gold Coast, wherever you live, or even if you're renting, your home is your place of refuge.
Yeah.
And to have a crazy person out there. Now look, very few people are as fixated as him. However, I do more TROs than most, and first of all, I get, of the calls I get, 50% of the calls I get, now there are two kinds of restraining orders, of course.
Okay.
Domestic, husband-wife domestic violence restraining orders, which involve kicking people out of homes and all that. And then there's the district court restraining orders. Usually your neighbor, a fellow student, your kid and the other kid at the school, put TROs on each other, or somebody at your workplace, that kind of problem, or there's always the putting the TRO on your ex-husband, your baby daddy's new woman. That For some reason that's because
for the custody battle or the divorce settlement.
It's not in family court, because you don't qualify for a family court relationship there. But let's go back to the one that involves most people, which is the neighbor, the crazy neighbor. Now, look, in this case, they tried to be nice to Jerry and Mr. Hanel, and it didn't work. But for the most part, I'm going to tell you, if the guy is that crazy, and you always hear about it, the old man sitting over there and staring at your kids and grumpy about, why is your car here, or why is your garbage can there, or he's constantly complaining, possibly calling the police on you. There's very little there's very little you can do, and it just ruins your peace of mind. You're hopefully they're a tenant and can move out, but if they're the landowner, you're in big trouble. But I always tell people, just go out of your way to shower the person with kindness. Say, I'm so sorry about that garbage can. Here's a cake I made you. And
It's hard to do, but you gotta...
Most people are like, hey, heck with that. These guys are freaking... Hey, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
The person is crazy, or it's the person's wife is crazy. The crazy neighbors are not only men now. There's women make up a significant, a portion of that. Okay, I'd still say higher percentage of crazy men.
Okay.
But still a significant portion of women, compared to domestic violence, I'd say. And you make an effort to heal. And those are when they're really crazy. Most of these TROs between neighbors, it started with this or that, and there was a misunderstanding, or maybe somebody was insensitive. You apologize and you try to move forward, because you just don't want to deal with it. In your mind, you're not really being sincere, but you just don't want to deal with the hassle, and you certainly don't want to waste money on attorney's fees.
Yeah.
Because restraining orders are not, here's the key, restraining orders in these district court neighbor cases, no one's going to be forced to move. And the bottom line is, if I file you're my neighbor, I file a restraining order on you because you're crazy and you're doing this crazy stuff, you're going to file one on me. And you're going to make up all these lies about stuff I'm doing, you know, and we're going to end up both with restraining orders on each other, likely. Now, I'm living my life taking care of my kids, but you're the crazy person who's going to make up stuff on me and have me arrested for a TRO violation. Or more importantly, you break the TRO and I have you arrested. As soon as you get out of jail,
you're right next door.
You're going to make a fake accusation to have me arrested.
Yeah.
I always tell people, what gives you more protection? A restraining order versus if you have cross restraining orders, this crazy person is now going to have the ability to pick up the phone, make up a BS story, and have you arrested.
Yeah.
So you got to move. I thought it was like too much I'm like, no. It takes so much to find a place, get a mortgage, or work all your life, find a spot. I thought that took so much. I was like, no, I'm not moving.
I'm not saying he hadn't necessarily put
But you
it
might have to move if he's that crazy.
You know, or dangerous, or, I mean, this guy was a unique individual.
But I think he crossed the line when you were talking about how he'd set up like a barbecue on the property line, and then he'd have the leaves burn only on the days where the wind would blow specifically into your client's yard. I think when there's fire involved, I think that's when you cross the. I'm like, yo, if the guy is crazy and there's fire.
Well, you know, I get the whole, you know, I mean, the fire was in, so he built
Fires, you know.
My client built this beautifully long fence, solid fence, just because, you know, he just had it already. And this is before he even filed the TROs. And so what the guy would do, after we got the first restraining order, which prevented him from contacting my client or communicating with him, and for instance, he wasn't allowed to attach things to the fence because he would put these like noisemakers. The wind would blow and it would bang the fence or something or other. So he built this little thingamajig structure so he wasn't attached to the fence, but the wind would blow and it would still go bang, bang, like all night long, okay? And I mean, it's crazy. He put up big pots of water solely to breed mosquitoes.
Oh God.
You know, again, why? Who does these kind? You know, you always put some fish in there, right? You know, it's crazy things like that. But this
or the dog.
Yeah,
remember, he had an open burial casket in the yard for his dog for like a week. Just let the dog.
That I didn't know that one.
That was in the paper too. When the dog died, he put the dog into the yard and just had like an open casket. And when the neighbors said, "Please bury your dog, it's been too long," he tried to say, "Give me $50,000 because I want to use the DNA and clone a new dog." That's what he said.
No, towards the end he was really losing it. But back to the fire thing. So he builds this. He puts the Weber or whatever on a little stand so it's high enough over the fence line. Lights it only on days that the smoke pours straight into my client's house 10 yards. These houses are real close together, 10 yards away. And then you've seen some videos on the news of this billowing smoke. And so we go to court about it, and we file a specific motion to modify the restraining order where he can't flood my client's house with smoke. Because the fire department would come, the police would come in, he'd say, I have a First Amendment right to burn these things and whatever. And the judge told him, well, why are you doing it? Well, I have a right to do it. But why are you flooding this? Look at the video. Why are you flooding this house with smoke? And he says, I have a right to do it. You're doing it to bother him. I have a right to do it. And the judge is like, no. And put restrictions on where he could barbecue. Obviously, it was in a...
You can't, but the way he was doing it on top of the property line, on the wall, getting the little step up to get... It's not
wet leaves.
Yeah, it's not a barbecue.
But again, if he wanted to do the process, he could do it in another... The judge made a map, forced him to make a map. And again, that's the kind of detail we had to work on. Because he would, he was not allowed to go on the property in front of the house, or so he would, or walk in front of the house. So he would ride his moped and stop in front of the street, in the house, in front of the house. He couldn't in a public place. He couldn't follow more than 50 feet. So there's my client and his his girlfriend and her kids, then girlfriend and his kids walking along, and he'd be following behind. Probably 60, 70 feet. They'd stop. He'd stop. Again, he's just doing this thing. his other thing was, and again, this obviously, I think that's why he knew the officers were coming down, because his surveillance systems, he was just fixated. And he had cameras everywhere, and he'd wear a GoPro, and then he got, like, he had a thing on his hat, and then he had one on his clip on his shirt or something or another. And then he had the Apple glasses, or we believe they're Apple glasses. And, well, first of all, in the trials, he produced evidence that were produced from video glasses, right? And also, you see in the video, sometimes he's always doing this. You know, he's backing up and he's...
Like to turn on a record function.
Press it, and he's keeping his body artificially totally straight, you know. Of course, I assume he could have just moved his head, but, you know, who knows. But he's backing up like this. It's clearly he's doing this. And he would approach neighbors, like come right up to them. And one of the women, he'd just follow her with the glasses, and or she'd be at the park walking, you know, jogging, and he'd position himself at the exit of the park, entrance exit. So, and they'd ask him. The lawyer asked the lady in the trial, "Well, all you have to do is go out the other exit." Well, the other exit's a quarter mile away. I mean, you know, why does he appear here when he knows I'm jogging, because he has surveillance cameras? And then, or she takes a short, you know, cuts across the grass to avoid him, and he'll throw the ball with the dog. It's a leash required park. The TROs specifically ordered him to have the dog on a leash, and he'd throw the ball wherever, ahead of where she was running. So here comes the dog, and there she is, you know. I mean, he was a very calculating kind of guy.
He's a diabolical guy, and he's mentally ill.
Double trouble.
And he was fixated with fire. And now we find out he had a good... I read an article that said he had military training. It's unclear. It was like a blog where he had military training back.
My guess is everybody out there in Eastern Europe has military. You know,
it might be required for a certain period, right?
Draft situation. I mean, I don't know if he was like
Korea, they make you go for I think 2 years.
Yeah, a Korean zombie, right?
Yeah, and in the Middle East, Israel, I think you have to do 1 or 2 years, even the women.
Yeah,
so maybe the Soviet bloc, Czechoslovakia, maybe.
I'm pretty sure everybody has to. I read that he had some training, but even then, I mean, a guy there who thought he was being, the CIA or the Secret Service was wiretapping or following him and everything else, and there's a grand conspiracy out to get him. Even though we never had a report of guns, even though we didn't,
and they weren't registered to him.
Registered to him. I mean, if I were to bet, I would bet my mortgage that the man had a gun. I mean, you are not that crazy and fixated on the world's out to get me and
the government monitoring you,
and you're preparing for the zombie apocalypse. You know what I mean? I mean, that's obvious. It's not the zombie apocalypse, but you know what I mean. The government taking over kind of thing. That's the brain he had, and a guy like that has a gun buried somewhere. You know what I mean? Yeah. Although I'm stunned that apparently there were these weapons, that many weapons, and that's an issue. Unregistered firearms. Everyone's saying bigger penalties for firearms. That's not going to make it.
But I don't know if it would have mattered because all of the ones he had were unregistered. Yeah. He didn't have registered firearms, so all the people who do it the right way have to go through more trouble when it was that guy who just didn't even bother, right?
Yeah.
The TRO bars you from having firearms as well, too, right?
And police and judges take that super seriously.
So what are some strategies so you got a crazy neighbor. What are some strategies to help mitigate the circumstances? And I know you've tried to give me some tips, but explain your 99-to-1 theory or ratio.
First of all I always tell people it's called 99-to-1. Dude, your neighbor's crazy, harassing you. The one day you go out there and say, "Bro, what the F you doing? You do this, I'm going to kick your ass." That's going to be videotaped. He's going to go file a restraining order on you, and he's going to play a video of you going on, "Hey!" Don't do it. And not to mention, it will not have any impact. Well, yeah, the guy going back down. You always got to remain calm and think about what I call independent verification. If guy's doing crazy things, you videotape it. Now I gotta admit that's kind of hard. Usually it's like this whole banging thing, he's like banging in the middle of the night just to mess with you, or you know what I mean, or whatever it is. You get proof of this. You put up a little Costco security camera, whatever it is. You get proof of these things to prove you are not doing anything wrong, and then do not respond in a manner that he can use against you. Again, because what's happened is you file a TRO on him, he's going to file one on you and play that one tape on you along with a whole bunch of other made-up BS accusations about you. Because again, the system rewards the liar. Okay? It's unfortunate, the TRO system. In our case, I want to make it clear, the judge ruled for us every time we went to court. The judge ruled for us, ordered attorney's fees. The difference here is Hanel just kept fighting and kept paying lawyers. And
where was he getting money since he wasn't working?
Well, he wasn't paying rent.
He wasn't paying rent, so I guess he had some extra.
I don't know if he had Social Security, who knows what, but I mean, pay rent, it's half the ball game,
Especially in Hawaii.
And you eat ramen rent every day or something, who knows? But he had some very good lawyers who fought for him, asserted his rights to have a trial, in which we totally dominated and won because the facts were the videos and the facts, his own videos, everything pointed to this constant pattern of harassment. But by the way, his cases, even though we won and were ordered attorney's fees, and the judge ruled my side is credible, he is not credible, and he's harassing them. Okay, and that credibility is key, because once you find the judge rules that you're credible and the other side isn't, it has to be an error of law or something. The TRO is, are you dangerous or not? Okay, he appealed these things.
Wow.
4 different appeals. There's the 2 clients and cross. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And he paid very good lawyers to do this.
Vindictive. He could have just taken it, but he decided to appeal. It's a TRO, come on.
He wants to fight, and you're not going to win on appeal, but...
He's looking for a fight.
Anyway.
It's sport for him.
Well, fixation. But back to your point about what can one do. So you need independent verification. You cannot react even once. It document things. It's in writing. And again, it's like the crazy person is never going to go... After you, oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
My bad.
My bad. It's like,
I had this wrong all this
time. By the way, this same thing applies in relationships. Domestic divorce side. This whole idea, I'm going to go through the divorce and it's a matter of principle. There's no principle. I always tell clients, in what world is your other half, man or woman, gonna say after you, oh, you know what? It finally occurred to me that you're right and I've been wrong all these years. It doesn't, take a step back, stop arguing, document and go forward. That's a pretty terrible, what are you going to do? But the options other than that are very limited. You can try mediation. And again, stop thinking you're going to get some degree, I call it a peace treaty versus a ceasefire. Peace treaty is where you all shake, everyone's better about things, and you're looking for a ceasefire. You might get a peace treaty if you apologize and shake a hand and clears up the guy's head, and hopefully he's going to get fixated on somebody else.
Yeah.
That's a terrible way. Well, but it's a principle. He's harassing people, and I don't want him to go harass somebody else. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you don't want to fight their battles. You have to cut out.
You can't protect the world from a crazy person, but you can try to assure that you and your family live in peace.
Yeah, and I think it's so cool that your one client just decided, I'm done, I'm moving, because I didn't even see that as an option.
Well, it is not. Again, he hadn't put his house up for sale, but I think he just realized. Again,
life is short.
And I'm not even saying that's a public position, but he was at a position where he thought, this is sapping my energy, and he's just one of these mellow dudes, and anyway.
To a T, I've read that the neighbors did just about everything you would advise neighbors to do, and this was like just a freak accident, because there is an article that said one of the neighbors, actually it was one of Lois's, the victim, one of Lois's roommates upstairs, had called the Department of Human Services, went down to the station in Waikiki, they did send somebody out to evaluate him. I guess.
Evaluate her.
Oh, it's to evaluate.
That's what I
Oh.
don't know, but
Okay.
it's maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was more like he was abusing her, I thought.
Yeah. Elder abuse.
So you're gonna really check. You're not checking on him. You're checking on her. Is she safe? And I'm sure she said, "Oh, I'm fine." Again, I don't know this for a fact, but obviously they didn't find something, and so I don't blame them because she was a clear-headed individual who just thought that her kumbaya theory was gonna work somehow with this crazy dude. But again, he really probably did deteriorated in the last year. Just his fixation on things and I mean, before he would set to video traps and all these kind of things. Now, don't forget though, but he stabbed that lady, and apparently he was already apparently, according to the news reports, after he stabbed her, he went back in and she could hear him, what sounded to be him beating the lady.
More.
Although
right?
she was not screaming.
Yeah.
So she was out.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, and let's hope she was out when that fire went going.
Crazy. There's also some controversy about the way that the fire was handled. I've reached out to a lot of different people and some experts who know about fire, and I just wanted to stick up for the Hawaii Fire Department.
Yes.
Because what they did was, first, they got a response to what they thought was a stabbing, then a shooting, then a fire, and then
Inferno.
But then what do they call it when they have a guy who, an open
active
shooter, and how are you supposed to put out a fire when there's an active shooter who's unaccounted for, who might just shoot more cops or firefighters,
or shoot firemen,
and who's already shot 2 cops, and there's an active shoot? It's an impossible position.
I don't know the answer to that, and I do know that my friends, especially for instance, I have a bunch of friends who are either firemen or I know their wives, and I gotta tell you, the wife,
it's crazy.
Why, honey? No, you're not gonna go in front of a shooter. You risk yourself with a fire, but it's the active shooter is not part of your job description.
Exactly, and what they did, and HPD probably deserves more credit that I doubt they'll ever get, but they evacuated everybody within that area. They had the active shooter. They had to mitigate those circumstances. They had a fire going on. They had firefighters ready to go. They had their own cop cars. A few of their own cop cars were close and were bursting into flame.
The
crazy circumstances.
Well, what's interesting is
crazy.
One of my clients is it's funny because he videotaped almost everything, because over the years I've just drilled in his head, he joked to me, he goes, "Yeah, I had you yelling in my head, I pulled out my camera." So immediately he got the police attention. He said, you got to follow me. You can't go down there. You got to follow me. They're looking at him. He's like, "They have security cameras. You follow me." So he took him onto his property, showed them the vantage point from his upper deck where you could look down right where they needed to see, and unlocked. And then there was also this there was a right-of-way behind all these houses. You can't really see it on the burned-down map. But he unlocked the gate for them and told them where the door was. They had concerns about, they didn't know if the shooter was upstairs or downstairs. And he said, no, he's downstairs in that unit. There's no...
It's him, it's Jarda, it's downstairs.
There's no connection between the two. There's no back door. There's no window, blah, blah, blah. This is where he has to be. He's shooting you from these, but please understand, he has surveillance everywhere, although he does not have surveillance in this right-of-way and back. He set them up. He then helped, and against all on video, he helped reposition the shooters, the HPD snipers. Actually, these are regular officers. The SWAT team wasn't there yet, who were doing their best to set up, because they couldn't get to the officers because they didn't know where the shooter was.
And plus, I think with the way that it happened and what supposedly happened with the rifle, there's no way I think they could have... I'm not sure if they could have been carried off and survived. I think it was
Well, I actually saw...
High speculation, though, but...
I saw a video...
Point-blank range kind of deal.
That was not publicly released, of a officer at some point in time, an officer pretty much said, "What the hell?" Ran out there, grabbed the arms, and pulled the officer under limited cover, not to safety. And eventually, there's a very well. A video on Facebook and all that showing
the neighbor
about 5 officers. Yeah, the neighbor dragging, carrying the officer up. Like 5 of them or something. This is like one guy running out. It's like a war movie. Saving Private Ryan or whatever. Running out, grabbing, and just pulling. And. Heroic and gutsy move. Again, you didn't know what was happening, so that's what one of my clients did. But he filled them in on all this, and it's just it's surreal when you're watching his cell phone camera, because he's like running down the hallway carrying the camera, and everyone always does this whole, well, why didn't you freaking help kind of thing. Well, first of all, what can you do? But he was helping. Position the officers, getting them access, and he's like, wait, not here. Went and opened up this this other area where, because of a certain window, gave him a different angle, and more cover, and it was but again, it was unfortunately too late for the those 2 officers.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like, you'll notice that if everyday people are just on their cell phone and they might be texting. Like, they might bump into people. Like, come on. You can't even text and walk. How are you supposed to handle active shooter, officers down, the popping noises from either the gun or the fire or the electrical... you watch those, there's popping and sounds.
Well,
the heat.
I don't know if anybody did it in this case, but you see Hungry Hawaiian or whatever, and there's always this fight, and people are like, hey, how come you're videotaping this and not helping, and I get it but some occasions I could see why, or you could yell, hey, the police, or why aren't you calling the police, I assume, in some of these situations, and I get the criticism, but it's not here, and I'm not saying I've even seen it here, but he was clearly helping them.
Yeah, no, crazy situation, and the more I've talked to people about this, I don't know if there's really a solution. I think HPD is going to lobby for more stringent, like there's like 38, I believe, different gun bills or measures that they're trying to change the laws. Right on, go for it. But I don't know just how that could have changed the outcome on this one crazy event.